You know what they say, when it rains it pours. Well, it's been pouring VCRs for the last month or so here. This is one I've had for a while, and I had to get a part for it, so I've been kind of sitting on this. So it's kind of a two-parter, but I put them together and finally got a part, and I didn't know it was going to fix it, but we'll find out. It's another one of these combo Funai units, Toshiba DVR 7. Let's take a look at it and see if we can get it going. Here we have another Toshiba Funai. This is another DVR 7. This one came in for repair. Has a tape jammed in it. Thinking probably mode switch before I even plug this thing in. So let's just see what it does, if anything. Before I even plug it in, we're going to take the top off it. Just so we can observe what happens when the power is applied. Well, I do believe it's eating the tape for starters. Mechanism's in the unloaded state on this one. So we'll power it up and just see what it attempts to do, but I probably just have to wind the tape out manually on this one, and then we can work on it. But I just want to see what it does. Does it do anything when I try to power it up? Okay, the loading motor tries to kick initially, and it's jammed. But the tape is definitely wound in there pretty good. We need to get the tape out first before doing anything else. Going the wrong way there. I have a sneaking suspicion that the guide is trapped, and that's why it won't eject, because of just the way the tape is threaded on this thing. If I get this damaged tape out of the way, I might be able to make some more progress here. Okay, will it eject? It won't, but again, the tape is jammed in behind these guides. Let me just try pulling this tape out from here. Get the tape on the right side of the guides. That way the guides can fully retract. Incidentally, you turn it towards you this way to lift the tape out. So I'm pretty confident that the fault on this is going to be the mode switch is dirty. We'll try running the mechanism through its paces without a tape in it at all, and just see what happens now when I try powering it up. Will it complete the unloading cycle? Okay, now if I try to load it by releasing the lock tabs, this is a classic mode switch type fault. So we're going to take the mode switch out. Or actually, we're not going to take the mode switch out. You can't. But we have to take the chassis out. We have to strip down the unit and remove the chassis so we can remove the circuit board and clean the mode switch, and I bet that'll fix the problem on this one. So let's get started on that. I've had a number of these units that have had the same fault. This will be number 4 in the last few months. A part of the problem, people are going to jump all over this and say, well, that's because they're crappy Funai machines, but it's not. It's got nothing to do with the fact that they're Funai machines. What it has got to do with is the fact that people don't use VCRs these days. And when equipment sits around, it doesn't matter whether Funai made it, or whether Sony made it, or Panasonic made it. When equipment sits around unused, it breaks down. Especially something as mechanical as a VCR. That's the problem. It's the unit sitting there not being used, and the contacts on the switches exposed to the air. And eventually the air wins, the oxygen wins, it oxidates the contacts, and they fail. So it really doesn't matter what brand the unit is, because this type of failure happens on them all. I have to take the DVD recorder out first, so that's these connectors. DVD drive just lifts out. Next we need to remove the power supply and remove the main board. So to take out the power supply, we're going to undo this connector. And remove the screws that hold the power supply in place. I think that one's going to come out, and this one. And one more. 4 screws. These are metal screws. It's going into the metal base of the unit. So power supply out of the way. Some will say you don't have to remove the power supply, but I think it just makes it easier to get the unit apart. I'll take out this sub circuit board. This is the tuner. Unplug the tuner. And all these screws that hold down the main board have to come out, as well as the screws on the back panel that hold the jacks in place. You know what? I'm going to use the power screwdriver for these ones. Actually, you know, do I have to take those out? Or if I just take the back panel off, I might be able to just lift the whole back panel off and leave that attached. And I know there's one or two more that are holding this thing in place. Where the heck are they? Right back here. I think that's the last one. And it should lift this whole board off of the chassis. There we go. This bracket out of the way. Like that. Okay, now the board pops out. On the bottom, there's two screws that have to come out that hold the mechanism down to the chassis. There's one screw here, and there's another screw that's hidden underneath this flexible cable. There are different types of screws. One is a plastic screw, and one of them is a metal screw. This is the plastic screw over here. It's got a coarse thread to it, as you can see, and this one is a metal screw. We remove these two screws. Now we can carefully turn the unit over so that we can access the switch. We're going to keep the unit held together while we turn it over. And now we can access the mode encoder switch. I'm just going to move the camera so you guys can see where it is. So if we lift up the chassis, we'll find that the mode encoder switch is located right in here. It's right there. And what we need to do is we need to pop it apart. So we can just grab it and kind of pull it apart. And you will see that the contacts in here are very, very dirty. If we look down here, if I get the light in there, and we'll zoom the camera in, this is the culprit on the vast majority of these. You see how black that is? So we're going to get in there with some deoxit and a Q-tip, and we're going to clean that switch. So I'm just going to use some deoxit D100L. This is just the fully concentrated. It's a liquid, and you can use the spray stuff as well. I just find this stuff, it's a little easier to control. You're not spraying it all over the place. So I'm going to put some deoxit onto the contacts here, and then we'll get in there with a Q-tip and we'll clean it up. We'll see how much dirt and corrosion or oxidation, as some people will call it, will come off this contact. Just wipe it a few times, and as you can see, it's already starting to come clean. I'm using the metal tip to actually scratch the surface a bit, just to break through any surface corrosion and oxidation. Let the cleaner penetrate down to the bare. It's a silver, I think it's probably silver plating that's on this. As you can see, there's a fair bit of dirt and oxidation that's come off of the switch. I'm going to put some more. I'm going to leave a coating on here. This is, it has a petroleum base that will leave a residue behind to help protect the switch. But in reality, the best thing to do on these machines is to use them. You know, even if you don't plan on using your VHS machine on a regular basis, it never hurts to just once in a while grab a tape, throw a tape in the machine, and go through all the motions. Put it in play, stop, rewind, and go through all the motions on it. That way it'll keep the switches, well, these switch, there's only really one switch in here that goes bad. It's the mode switch, but it'll keep the switch contacts clean. So I just bent the spring contacts back a bit just to give it a little bit more tension. We're going to put the switch back together, and I'll rotate it several times before putting the chassis back together. So we pop the switch back together, and it just pops in and clips down. And I'll just spin it a bit. This action will also polish the contacts. Put it back in the rest position, which is the pointing straight back. There's on the gear here, there's a hole on this cam that it fits into, so when you put it back together, you have to make sure that you line up the metal pin right here. Use my deoxit bottle. There's a metal pin right here. That metal pin goes into the hole in the middle of the switch. You probably can see it better now. There's a hole in the middle of that switch. So that metal pin goes into that hole, and the plastic pin goes into a hole in the gear. So when you put it back together, just make sure you get the alignment correct so that the switch will drop into place. And once it does, it'll sit and sandwich together. Now we can turn the unit upside down again and replace the two screws. The one metal screw and the plastic screw that hold the chassis together. Once it's lined up, you'll see the screw hole lining up over here. This is the metal screw, the silver one. And then again the same for this one over here. So this is where these machines got really cheap, was in the good old days when VCRs were meant to be serviced, this would have had a plug on it, as with this one and this one here. They would have all had plugs that you could undo the connection, separate the board from the chassis so you could work on it. But they got really cheap, and to cut costs, they started soldering the connectors directly on, because these units were really never intended to be serviced. They were intended that they would operate until they ceased to operate, and then they would be replaced. Now this machine was manufactured, I think it's 2009, so this would have been, Funai they were the last manufacturer. People are very critical of Funai and they knock them all the time, but Funai was actually the last manufacturer to still make VHS recorders. Everybody else had abandoned the format, and Funai hung in there and made them till I think it was 2015. They made them longer than anybody else, and they got it down to a science. The machines actually were fairly reliable. They had a very simple mechanism. The fewest count of parts, mechanical parts, compared to some of the old ones. And yeah, they had their issues for sure, because they used a lot of plastic and stuff in them. But really, as far as the machine itself went, they weren't that bad. It's just that the reason why we've had so many problems with these things is because, well, people let them just sit. They haven't been using them, and they sit and deteriorate. And when that happens, well, you end up with problems. Get the chassis back. And now just place all the screws back in and reassemble the unit. Where'd it go? This thing can probably be plugged in now at this point. Let's see whether it does anything. I've got everything plugged in on it. And it's lighting up. We have power. Okay, this unit has more problems as it won't turn on. It doesn't go through the power up self-test that these units normally will go through. Normally when they're turned on, it'll attempt to load any disk that's in the drive, in the disk drive, and then it'll switch to VCR mode. And when you select the mode VCR or DVD, you can switch back and forth, and the display will switch between your line input or your DVD display. It doesn't. This button doesn't do anything. I've ruled out a problem on the DVD drive, and I've ruled out a problem on the power supply. So there's a problem on the main board. I'm going to have to pull the board out, I guess, again, and take a look at it and see if I can see any problem that is occurring. So if we look at the display, when I turn it on, it's going to say load. And both these lights come on, and they shouldn't. And this is what it was doing before. It was doing exactly the same thing when the tape was jammed in it. And both lights are coming on here, right? And only one should come on. Yet, if I activate the tape mechanism, it will come on and load the cassette. And it'll actually kick the cassette out as well. So I got to pull this mechanism out again and see what's happening with it. See, it does go through the loading cycle and unload it, but there's something going on in the VCR section. As I say, I've ruled out the DVD drive, and I've ruled out the power supply, and I did that by just subbing the DVD drive or sub this into my existing unit. I've got one identical, so I put the power supply in mine and it works. I put the DVD drive in mine and it works. Therefore, I've ruled out a problem with the DVD drive and a problem with the power supply. And when I tried my power supply and my DVD drive in this one, I had exactly the same fault. So something on the main board is causing the problem. I didn't isolate this. I'm just going to unplug the tuner. I don't think the tuner is going to be causing us a problem, but if there's a short on here, it certainly could. It certainly could cause trouble. So let's just try unplugging the tuner and see whether it still goes into that shutdown state. Yes, I believe the unit will operate without the tuner plugged in. It's doing the same, so it's not a problem with the tuner. Something on the main board. So we'll take it apart again and see whether I can see what's causing the problem. So with the chassis out, we can check some voltages, such as the 5-volt supply, the power on 3.3 volt supply. Aha, that should be okay. That's the 12-volt supply, 11-volt supply when it's turned on, and when I turn it on, it did go up there for a sec there. There we go. So that one is going up there when it turns on. power on 3.3 volts is not there. See the power on 3.3 right on this rail right here. Right? It says power on 3.3. That should have 3.3. It's got 1.8 volts on it. When I power it up, it should go to 3.3, and it's not. I wonder if this is if this regulator here might be at fault. And 1.8 on it. Which one is this? 1.9. I wonder if this thing is bad. I don't see any circuit protectors on this thing. I was looking for like circuit protectors, but I don't see any. Not like some of the other VCRs that have these little fast-acting circuit protectors. Not this one. That's 5 volt supply constant, and it is working there. 5.5 volts, yeah. Or 5 volts, it's got 5.2 on it. The one that's not working is this power on 3.3. I wonder what feeds that. It's only got 1.8 on it. I wonder if it's that regulator. What is it connected to? Is it connected to this thing? Aha, it's connected to that. I wonder if that regulator's bad. I wanted to find out bad enough I could pull it off of mine, but we have on this we got 4.6 volts there on that pin. This is probably the one that controls it. Ground. Is this the line that controls it? 2.7. I think that this regulator might be foobar. Let's just take a look. Minus 30, it's got minus 22 on it. That's for the display, I believe. That's for the vacuum display. Yeah, the only one that's not coming up is this power on 3.3 is low. I don't know whether it's fed out of that regulator. Oh, it is fed from the regulator, but I don't know if that's the reason why it's low or whether there's something else loading it down. That's the other consideration, is that there's something that's loading this supply down. It's always a possibility, right, that there's another part that's shorted somewhere that's pulling that 3.3 volt line down. About all I can do is just measure the voltages that are listed on here. Like this one says always 18 volts, so it's got 17.5. That's probably close enough to 18. 32 volts. The zener regulates that. That one's regulated at 18 volts, 17.5. There's a zener there. Always 5. This one's a power on 5 volts. We'll see whether that one goes up to 5 when I hit the power switch. Let's see, it's not going to 5 volts, it's only going to like 1 volt.
We definitely have a 5 volts. Like the 3.3 is low, and the 5 volt, the power on 5 volt line is low too. Another plus 5. The power on, and this one's also missing a voltage. It could be, I mean, it even could be like a shorted, one of the ICs might be shorted on this thing. Could be anything. See that 5 volt supply, 5 volt switch 5 volts is not going up to 5 volts. And the unit's going into a shutdown mode. Power on 5 volt over here. 1.4. This is ever 5 volts. It's always running, so we know that that supply is working. That should be the toggle for power on 5 volt. That's the switch that controls it. Interesting. So I hit the power button, nothing comes up. Momentarily. Weird. This is about at the time when if you had a schematic. That one's showing power 5. Oh, so this is power 5. That might have been the 12 volt line. This is power 5 here. That's like inverted, because when it's on, when it's off, it's got 5 volts. When it's on, it's got 0. That might be the toggle for the regulator. Okay, these chips are warm. So those are powered up. Those chips. That one's cool, but these ones here, these ones are actually warm. Not overly hot, but they're certainly warm.
I think when we get that regulator, I'm going to replace both those regulators. That seems to be the most likely culprit, is those low voltage switched regulators. They would switch the power off and on. So I'm going to have to source these, and we'll pick this up again once I get the parts in.
So I just replaced these two regulators. They're both the same. The Sharp 070XFC1. These are like a switch. They turn on and off 3.3 volts. There's two of them here. I just changed these, and I just put the board back in. Bench power's off at the moment. Keep you guys in suspense. Remember, it was flashing. The lights were blinking here. That's a good sign. Aha, tape and load. Let's plug it in. See whether it works. I have a blue screen of death. Try a tape.
Let me just say this. It's easy to use. Proof of the simplicity of using it can be found in one of the key features of the JVC 95 series display.
It works.
VGA PC input.
Now,
the JVC designers have opted to place right here.
We'll test the
so there's no need to pull the unit out.
the DVD drive.
Reach around behind and try and...
Oops, where's the right button to stop here? It's eject, I believe. I'm going to put the front panel on this, and then we're going to test this out and see if it records the DVD. Okay, I've got a DVD plus RW. This disc, I can erase this one. This one's got a bunch of MP3s that I just copied on it for testing before. I'm curious as to whether this machine will play it or not. My DVR 7 does not play MP3s. At least the one that I've got in the house does not. But my standalone Toshiba deck does play MP3s. So I'm curious as to whether this DVR 7 will play MP3s or not. Because this one is a little bit newer than the one I have by a couple of years. So let's see if it will or not. Is it going to play or is it not? Oh, look, it's going to play. I have 69 pages of tracks on here with the remote control. I can scroll through all of them. Nope, it's not. I thought it was going to be Eleanor Rigby, but it's not. This is a good disc I got. This is just a few things. This is nothing. I've got tons and tons and tons of stuff. Yeah, 546 tracks. Okay, enough of that. So, I wonder if I should format this disc. Yeah, I guess I can. This is all on my hard drive anyway, so I just kind of threw this together to test another DVD player to see if it would play a DVD with MP3s on it, which it does. So, okay, I've got a DVD plus RW. I have dash RWs too. I just grabbed a plus RW for testing. I guess what we'll do is I'll just copy this tape for the heck of it. Not like I'm going to keep it on disc or anything, but for the heck of it, let's just copy this tape. So I'll rewind it back to the beginning. And we'll play it to where the programming starts. There we go. Okay, so I'm at the beginning of the programming, or just before the programming starts, and I can just push the dubbing button on here, and that will start the VCR to DVD dubbing.
When is a TV more than a TV?
Well, make sure there's no music playing there. We'll let this just play for a few minutes, and then I'll test it and make sure that it will play back the disc. I'm sure that it will because the unit was dead before. But you see, look at the picture on this. These machines actually, look at how stable the picture is compared to some of the other ones that we've looked at. These machines actually do a really good job. They have a time-based corrector built in. So these DVR7s, you know, people say, oh, they're a piece of crap, they're Funai. But you know what? The quality of the picture that these produce going to DVD is actually very good, and I've been very impressed. See, I got 2 of them. I picked one up for 25 bucks, and the other one I got for free. So I've recorded probably enough of this now, so I'll stop the recording by pressing the stop button. It'll write it to disk. This being a DVD plus RW, I don't need to finalize the disc, although I still can finalize the plus RW discs to make them 100%. I think I can finalize them. I've never really given that much thought. I usually use DVD-RW for like temporary storage of stuff. And does it have a... Yeah, it does have finalize. So you can finalize this just to make it compatible with regular DVD players, but you don't need to for just use as a DVD in one of these recorders. So if I hit play now, it will play the track that I just recorded. So there's what I just recorded off the tape, complete with sound. Is it live or is it Memorex? Because I don't see any difference in the quality there. The quality is excellent. This machine's recording, which is all that I really care about. It's recording. And it's playing. So if I want to erase that track, I just stop it. And I go into the top menu. And you see my second track is empty there, and I click on the one I want to delete, and I go down and click on title delete and then say yes. Am I sure? Yes, I'm sure. And it's now going to erase that track and recover the time. Now the big difference and DVD RAM is that yes, I can delete titles. If I've got 5 titles on the disc, I could delete track 1, 3, and 4, for example, but it would not free up the space on the disc until I deleted the last one. If I had 5, say I had 5 tracks on the disc and it was full. I had 2 hours spaced out over 5 programs, and I deleted 1, 2, 3, and 4, but the 5th one was still there. I would not recover the space until I deleted the 5th one. But if I deleted, say, tracks 3, 4, and 5, I would recover the space. That's different between DVD RW and DVD plus RW and DVD RAM, I think. I could be wrong. Let's just test it. Let's test the theory. So we'll eject the tape. One thing I've never tried on these is, will these machines play a Super VHS tape? I doubt it. I don't think they have quasi playback, but I can certainly find out pretty quick. If I put an SVHS tape in, will it play? I don't expect it to. Because of the over deviation, you're going to get a lot of streaks. You get a lot of streaks around any bright scenes. So for this little test, I'm going to just record some stuff off of my, it's got a tuner in here, so I've got it hooked up to my house cable. I'm going to record a few programs on here, just so we can see when I delete them, whether the recording time is regained by deleting some of the stuff in the middle. So I'll record maybe 2 or 3 tracks that are maybe 10 minutes long each. And then we'll delete the first couple and see whether we regain the time. I don't think we do on DVD plus RW. I know -RW definitely does not. RAM definitely does. I don't know whether we recover space in the VR mode on these discs or not. So we'll find out with this machine while I've got it apart. It's showing me that recording's 17 minutes, that recording's 4, and that recording's 7. So if I delete this title in the middle, and my remaining time on here was, what did I say, 34 minutes? Anyway, if I delete this title, this will not increase capacity. That's what I thought. So, so with DVD RAM, if I would delete that title, I would gain an extra 17 minutes. But in this, it won't. Right now, if I go up to the other title, it will. But if I delete this one, okay, will not increase capacity. Am I sure? Yes. So I've still got the same amount of capacity left. If I go to my, gotta wait for this to write to disk. So as you can see, it's now showing as an empty title. Right? I can't recover that space though. Not until I delete this one. If I delete this title, then I will recover the space on the disk. And that's the big difference between DVD RAM and DVD-RW or DVD plus RW. Either one of them you can only delete from the end of the disk. If I delete this one here, this will now restore the recording time. As you'll see when I finish it, I've now gone to 56 minutes remaining. I had 37 minutes before. So then if I go in and I delete this title, it'll restore everything. So that's the big differences between the different types of discs, and why DVD RAM was a better format. There we go, 1 hour and 1 minute. Why DVD RAM was such a great format, and Panasonic took advantage of that. It worked like a hard drive, whereas the other formats didn't. Anyway, this one is fixed. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Remember those regulators. Haven't seen it happen before, but keep an eye on them. Catch you later.